When my South African friend visited the US for the first time, I couldn't wait to show her around. All the little things I love about Tennessee. But you know what really knocked her socks off? The grocery store. Aisle after aisle of cereal, dozens of yogurt flavors, 16 brands of peanut butter. Wide-eyed, she stammered,
"How do you choose anything?"
I laughed until I realized I didn't have a good answer. We've been taught that more choices mean more freedom. But what if that's not actually true? If you've ever felt paralyzed scrolling Netflix, stared into a fridge and thought,
"There's nothing to eat,"
or second-guessed a decision after you made it, you're not alone. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Shannon, your Barefoot Librarian. After years of diving into research, earning a master's degree in holistic education, and working as a librarian and teacher, I've learned that most decision-making advice out there is packed with fluff. But when I stumbled across The Paradox of Choice by Dr. Schwartz, it hit me. This book's insights, though written over 2 decades ago, feel more relevant now than ever. In the 1980s, the average American grocery store carried about 14,000 items. By 2018, that number had more than doubled to over 33,000, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that explosion of options isn't just in the grocery store aisle. It's in every part of modern life. We're surrounded by choices, constantly. More choices should mean more freedom, right? Well, Dr. Schwartz's research suggests otherwise. The more options we have, the less satisfied we tend to feel. We second-guess ourselves, get overwhelmed, and even regret the decisions we've already made. That's the paradox of choice. And as your Barefoot Librarian, I'm here to unpack what it means, why it matters, and how to cut through the noise. No fluff, just the good stuff. Let's dive in. Part 1, when we choose. Let's talk about decision fatigue. It's real, and it sneaks up on us. Even tiny decisions add up. What to wear, what to eat, what show to watch, what email to respond to first. And by the time we need to make a big decision, like something health-related or parenting-related, we're already running on fumes. There's research showing that the more choices we have, the more drained we get. And in our world, there's a build-your-own option for everything. Health insurance, retirement plans, makeup routines, meal planning, even religious beliefs. You can mix and match a little of this and a little of that and end up with an overwhelming buffet of options, which can feel more paralyzing than empowering. One study found that cancer patients who thought they wanted full control over their treatment options later reported feeling more stressed and less satisfied when they had to make those decisions under pressure. In crisis mode, most people don't want a smorgasbord of options. They want guidance, clarity, and peace of mind. And the inverse of decision fatigue? Simplicity. During nutrition school, my husband Wes and I did this crazy experiment. A potato-only diet for 40 days. I know it sounds wild, but you know what? Life got weirdly peaceful. I didn't have to meal plan. I didn't have to think about what was for dinner. We weren't staring at 50 different condiments trying to make the perfect combo. We just ate potatoes. And as oddly boring as that might sound, it freed up so much mental space. There's a reason high performers like Barack Obama and Steve Jobs wore the same outfits every day. It wasn't a fashion statement, it was strategy. Fewer decisions equals more clarity. Part 2, how we choose. When we make decisions, we don't just think about the available choices, we compare them. Our minds work overtime assessing every possible option, trying to figure out which one will give us the most satisfaction. This process of comparison can have a powerful impact on the choices we make and how we feel about them afterward. Let's talk about anchoring and frames of reference. When making decisions, we often rely on the first piece of information we encounter, a phenomenon known as anchoring. This first piece of information serves as a reference point for all subsequent decisions, even if it's irrelevant. Once we set an anchor, it's difficult to break free from it, and our choices tend to revolve around that initial reference. For example, imagine you're deciding where to get gas. At one station, gas is priced at $3.49 per gallon. And at another station just down the street, it's $3.59 per gallon. Although the difference is just 10 cents, if the first price you see, $3.49, anchors your perception of what's reasonable. Even if the second station is more convenient, the anchoring effect makes the price difference seem larger than it actually is. Similarly, frames of reference influence how we perceive options based on how they're presented to us. Take a jacket priced at $100. One store might advertise it as 50% off, while another simply lists it as $100. Even though the price is the same, the framed offer of 50% off creates a sense of urgency and value, making it feel like a better deal, even though it's not. Both anchoring and framing shape our decisions without us even realizing it. Whether we're consciously aware of it or not, the initial price we encounter or the way an option is framed has a huge impact on our choices. Understanding these forces helps us make more intentional, less reactive decisions. This brings us to another critical factor in decision making: how we approach the process of comparing options. Maximizers and satisficers are two types of decision makers that illustrate how different approaches to comparing options can influence our decision-making processes. Maximizers are individuals who strive to make the best choice, no matter what. They find themselves constantly evaluating different options, searching for that elusive perfect choice. While this might seem like a strategy for success, it often leads to stress and regret. When you're constantly trying to get the best of the best, it's easy to end up feeling overwhelmed, unsure, and dissatisfied. No matter how much research you do or how many options you consider, there's always that nagging feeling that something might be better out there somewhere. On the other hand, satisficers are people who are happy with good enough. They don't waste time seeking out the perfect solution. Instead, they make a decision once they find an option that meets their basic needs. This doesn't mean they settle for mediocrity. In fact, satisficers can have very high standards. The difference is that once something meets their established criteria, whether it's a product, a job, or even a potential partner, they are content. They don't need to continue searching for the best because they've already found something that works for them. This approach leads to greater contentment, as satisficers are less likely to second-guess their decisions and get caught up in comparisons. The key difference between the two groups is how they approach the decision-making process. Maximizers are more likely to experience regret because they spent so much time seeking out the best option, and ultimately, no option feels perfect. Satisficers, by accepting that not every choice needs to be perfect, are generally more at ease with their decisions and experience less buyer's remorse. Research supports these differences. For instance, in one famous study called the Jam Study, researchers set up a booth offering either 6 varieties of jam or 24. While 24 varieties seemed like a great deal, shoppers were actually less likely to buy when faced with more choices. The overwhelming variety made it difficult for them to decide, and when they did make a choice, they weren't as happy with it. The results showed that too many options led to indecision and dissatisfaction. Another telling example, the retirement plan study, showed that when employees were given a wide range of retirement plan options, they were less likely to sign up. But when the number of choices was reduced, participation rates increased. This highlights how having too many options can lead to paralysis by analysis. Too much choice can leave us stuck, unable to make a decision. Maximizing isn't just about having too many options, it's also about comparison. Studies have shown that the more we compare, the less satisfied we are with our decision. When people are presented with multiple options to choose from, they are less likely to be happy with their final choice, no matter which one they choose. This is a phenomenon known as the paradox of choice. While we think more options give us more freedom, they can actually make us feel more trapped and dissatisfied. Maximizers in particular are prone to this paradox, constantly searching for that perfect option, but never truly feeling satisfied with any of them. Interestingly, even people who are typically satisficers can be drawn into maximizing behavior when presented with too many choices. Now, let me share a personal experience that really illustrates how easy it is to fall into the maximizer trap, especially when it comes to something as simple as buying potatoes. Like I said, we eat potatoes a lot. They are definitely a staple in our house. So when Wes came home one day with a small bag of overpriced potatoes, I was in disbelief. I normally buy potatoes in larger bags from a specific local store, so seeing a smaller one for a higher price made my inner maximizer go into overdrive. This is so embarrassing. I immediately insisted that we go to the store 30 minutes away and return them so that I could go get the better deal from my preferred store. Wes, who tends to be more pragmatic about things, tried to reason with me. But I was determined. I was convinced that getting the cheaper potatoes was worth the time and effort. After the trip, plus the gas and the time spent driving, I had to admit that Wes was right. The $4 I saved on the potatoes wasn't worth the time and effort we spent. But in that moment, I had been so fixated on comparing the options that I had overlooked the bigger picture. As it turns out, I had fallen into the trap of maximizing, being obsessed with getting the best deal, even when it was clear that the cost of that decision was far greater than the savings. This was a classic case of analysis paralysis, and I ended up regretting the whole ordeal. But I learned a valuable lesson that day about how the need to compare can actually lead us down the wrong path. Key takeaway: the more options we compare, the less satisfied we tend to be. When we're constantly seeking the best option, we often overlook the bigger picture and become more stressed about making the right choice. Whether we're talking about something as simple as groceries or as complex as retirement plans, sometimes less is more when it comes to making decisions. Part 3, why we suffer. Okay, buckle up. This is the best part of the paradox of choice that made me grab a pen and underline like a maniac and say,
Wes, you've got to hear this.
Dr. Barry Schwartz makes a case that sounds totally backwards at first. The more choices are actually making us miserable. We think more options will make us feel free and happy, but in reality, they're making us more anxious, less satisfied, and constantly second-guessing everything. Let me walk you through why that happens, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And here's the wild thing: choice really does matter. But it's not just about how many options we have, it's about whether or not we feel like we're the ones making the call. Dr. Barry Schwartz shares a couple of fascinating studies that show just how deeply this idea runs, starting with babies. In one experiment, researchers rigged a setup where babies could turn their heads to make a mobile spin. The babies who discovered that their movement controlled the mobile were more engaged and noticeably more content than the babies who just watched it spin on its own. They were the control group. Even at a tiny age, having a sense of agency made a difference. And then there's the other end of the age spectrum. In a nursing home study, some residents were given small choices, picking a plant to have in their rooms and caring for it themselves, or deciding when to watch a movie. Simple stuff, but meaningful. Another group had everything managed for them, right down to a plant being selected and placed in their room by staff and then taken care of by the staff. Over time, the residents who were given a little bit of control over their lives reported greater happiness, and here's the kicker: they were more active, more alert, and yes, many of them lived longer. Now, let's be clear, it's not about choosing between The Sound of Music and Casablanca that magically added years to their lives. But having a say, having something to be responsible for, reminded them that they still mattered. That sense of purpose and ownership, that's the part that makes a real difference. One big culprit is what psychologists call the fear of missing out. You've probably heard it as FOMO, and honestly, it's everywhere. When we're surrounded by choices, restaurants, jobs, potential partners, even what brand of toothpaste to buy, we start to worry. What if we don't pick the best one? What if the thing we didn't choose could have made us happier? That constant second guessing creates a loop of regret. Even if the thing we picked is great, we're haunted by all the other possibilities we left behind. And it's not just about regret. With so many options, we start to feel responsible for anything that goes wrong. It's like we think all this freedom to choose means we're 100% in control of how things turn out. But life doesn't work that way. Things go sideways sometimes, even when you make the right decision. Still, we beat ourselves up because, hey, we had all the options. If we're not thrilled with how it turned out, it must be our fault, right? That illusion of control just piles on more stress and disappointment. There are some wild studies to back this up. Remember the jam study we chatted about? In a fancy grocery store, researchers set up a tasting table. Sometimes it had those 24 kinds of jam, and sometimes it had only 6. You'd think those more options would lead to more sales, right? Nope. People were 10 times more likely to buy a jar when they were choosing from just 6. When there were too many that they tasted and browsed, the shoppers got overwhelmed and walked away without buying anything. This goes for big decisions too. Dr. Schwartz tells a story about a young guy trying to choose between 2 job offers. One in a place that sounded fun and exciting, and one in a place that sounded peaceful and grounded. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he got. He started imagining how his whole life might turn out differently depending on which job he took. Like this one decision would determine everything forever. The trade-offs felt huge, and no matter which he chose, he felt like he was missing out on something equally valuable. That kind of pressure can completely paralyze you. And then there's regret. Not just regular regret, but all its sneaky little variations. Like if-only regret, where we imagine how things could have gone better if we had just made one tiny change. These near misses haunt us. It's wild, but studies show we actually feel worse when we almost get what we want than when we miss it by a mile. It's like that classic example of Olympic medalists. The gold medalist is obviously thrilled. Bronze is usually grateful to be on the platform at all. But the silver medalists, the one who came so close to gold, they often look devastated because instead of celebrating what they achieved, their brain is busy playing a highlight reel of what could have been. That's how our minds work. We get trapped comparing reality to these imaginary outcomes that didn't even happen, but still feel real. It's like we're living in a multiverse where every alternate ending is now up for review. And then there's omission bias. We tend to regret things we didn't do even more than the things we did do. The trips we didn't take, the job we didn't apply for, the what if I just gone for it moments that keep circling back years later. Once we start spinning those mental what if scenarios, what psychologists call counterfactuals, our actual decision starts to feel worse by comparison. A counterfactual is basically an imagined version of reality of what could have happened if we had chosen differently. And even though it's completely made up, our brains treat it like a real valid benchmark. So we end up comparing real life to this fantasy version, and suddenly what we do have feels like not enough. Even if it was the right call at the time, even if it worked out okay, the very possibility of something better can rob us of our peace. You'd think regret might make us better decision makers, but Dr. Schwartz points out that we rarely use it constructively. Instead of saying,
Wow, I learned something here.
we spiral. We replay choices in our heads. We ruminate. We carry emotional baggage from past decisions that seeps into new ones. And when we anticipate regret, we can end up paralyzed before we even make a move. This gets even messier when you add in something called the hedonic treadmill. Basically, we adapt quickly. Let's say you get a raise, buy your dream car, or finally book that trip you've always wanted. At first, it feels amazing, but then it just becomes normal. Your brain adjusts, your expectations rise, and suddenly you're back on the hunt for the next thing to make you feel good again. Dr. Schwartz shares a beautiful example of this. Imagine a secretary making $40,000 a year. She lands a new job that pays $60,000 a year, and at first she's thrilled. She starts living a little larger, maybe upgrades her apartment, starts eating out more, and gets used to that $60,000 lifestyle. But then the company folds. Bad luck. Her old job offers to hire her back at $45,000, a huge raise from her original $40,000 salary. But instead of feeling lucky, she feels like she just took a $15,000 pay cut. Why? Because she adapted. Her new baseline has risen to $60,000, and now anything less feels like a loss, even if it's technically a gain from what was satisfying just a short time before. It's like walking into a cool room on a hot summer day. At first, it's bliss, but then your body adjusts, and when you step back outside, it feels even hotter than before. That's hedonic adaptation, and it seriously messes with how we predict what will satisfy us. We're also really bad at predicting how we'll feel after a decision. We tend to overestimate how happy a good outcome will make us and how devastated we'll be if it doesn't go our way. But here's the twist. Even huge life events don't always change our happiness as much as we think they will. Dr. Schwartz shares this wild study where they interviewed two very different groups of people. Recent lottery winners and individuals who had become paraplegic or quadriplegic after an accident. You'd expect those groups to be worlds apart in terms of happiness, right? But after some time had passed, their reported levels of happiness were surprisingly similar to their pre-shift levels. Not identical, but way closer than you'd guess. What's happening here? Again, adaptation. We think, if I just got that one thing, I'd be over the moon forever. Or if that ever happened to me, I'd never recover. But most of us bounce back to our baseline. That doesn't mean those events don't matter, it just means we're not as great at forecasting our emotional future as we'd like to think. And when reality doesn't match our high expectations, yep, disappointment. Even if everything technically went well, yikes. Another thing we seriously underestimate, just how much we're affected by comparison. Not just comparing what we have to what we could have had, but comparing ourselves to other people. Their lives, their choices, their success, that constant benchmarking against others' highlight reel makes us feel like we're falling behind, even when we're doing great. It's like being in a basketball game. If someone in the third row stands up to get a better view, the person behind them has to stand too, and the person behind them, and so on and so forth, until the whole stadium is standing, just to see at the same level they could before. That's the race for status. And it shows up in real life too. It used to be that going to college was a big deal. Now it's,
which college? And then it's, are you also an athlete, a musician? Do you have a business on the side?
the bar keeps raising because everyone's trying to stand up for a better view. So we try harder, we do more, we try to keep up, but all that pressure and comparison takes a toll. Studies have shown that when people feel like they don't have real control, or when their freedom feels overwhelming, it can actually lead to depression, especially if they feel like they should be doing better or choosing better. If only the best will do and you don't feel like you're measuring up, that's a recipe for self-blame and burnout. And here's the real kicker. Happiness doesn't increase in a straight line with money, success, or options. It's not linear. Once your basic needs are met, like food, shelter, and safety, adding more and more doesn't keep adding the same amount of joy. It's not like,
oh, if I was happy with $50,000, I'll be twice as happy with $100,000.
Nope, that's not how it works. Think of happiness and unhappiness like they come in units, but those units don't scale evenly. The first scoop of ice cream? Magic. The fifth scoop, you're questioning your life choices. It's the same with success, money, stuff, and yes, even choices. What once felt amazing becomes the new normal. You adapt, and suddenly you need more to feel that same bump of happiness you used to get from less. It's like chasing a moving target. At first, getting a little raise or booking a weekend trip lights you up, but after a while, you're scrolling vacation rentals
Like, ugh, I've seen better.
That's the hedonic treadmill in action, constantly needing more just to feel the same. The problem is we don't notice we're running. We just feel tired and strangely unsatisfied, even when life looks objectively good. Worse still, more options don't make it better. They make it harder, exacerbating the issue. More choices mean more pressure, more responsibility, more second guessing, more room for regret, and ultimately less joy. So no, more isn't always better. Sometimes more is just more, heavier, and way more exhausting than it needs to be. So what do we do with all this? Hang tight, that's what part 4 is all about. Part 4, what we can do. Okay, so we've covered a lot, and at this point you might be thinking,
Are we all just doomed to spiral forever in a pit of overthinking, regret, and way too many salad dressing options?
nope, not even close. Here's the good news. There's a ton we can do to make better decisions with way less stress and way more peace. It's not about becoming a different person. It's about using a few mindset shifts and simple tools to calm the chaos. Let's dive in. Choose when to choose. Not every decision deserves equal time and energy. So instead of being a picker, someone who agonizes over every single decision option, be a chooser. Choosers zoom out, focus on what matters, and decide with confidence. They don't waste 3 hours comparing vacuum reviews. They say,
This one sucks. Let's go.
let good be good enough. This one's huge. Dr. Schwartz calls it satisficing, which sounds like a made-up word, but it's actually magical. It means you find something that meets your needs and then you move on with your life. No obsessing, no endless comparing, just peace. Make your decisions non-reversible. Here's the thing, we often make ourselves more anxious by giving ourselves the option to change our minds. One study found that customers were actually less satisfied with purchases that could be returned. Think about it. When you can't look back, you're forced to commit. And that's a good thing. No buyer's remorse. No second guessing. Just move forward with confidence. Set decision deadlines. No more dragging things out. Give yourself a limit for how long you'll take to make a decision. Whether it's what to wear or what to have for dinner, set a timer and stick to it. This will keep you from getting lost in endless possibilities and instead help you to feel empowered and move forward. Practice an attitude of gratitude. Gratitude pulls us out of comparison and grounds us in the present. It's a tool for shifting our perspective, seeing the positives and avoiding the trap of what could have been. The more you practice gratitude, the more you'll start feeling like you have just enough. Anticipate adaptation. You know that feeling when you finally get the raise or buy the new car and think, this is it. This will change everything. Well, spoiler alert, it won't. That's called a hedonic adaptation. Eventually, your excitement levels off and you're back to the same baseline you were before. So embrace it. It's a natural part of life. Expect it and you won't feel as disappointed when that new thing isn't the magical fix you thought it would be. Regret less. Regret can feel like a heavy weight to carry around, especially when we start imagining what-if scenarios. Instead, focus on the decisions that did work out, not the ones that didn't. Don't let missed opportunities, whether real or imagined, drag you down. And hey, if you're not sure whether you made the right decision, it's okay. Learn and move forward. Control expectation. Expectations are a major player in our happiness. When we expect too much, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. So manage your expectations by getting real about what you can achieve, what you can control, and what you can live without. Keep your goals realistic and you won't be let down when things don't go quite as planned. Curtail social comparison. Stop comparing your journey to everyone else's. Sure, it's tempting to look around and think you should be doing more, but the truth is your success and happiness are uniquely yours. Social comparison can lead to feelings of inadequacy and dissatisfaction. Focus on your path and let go of the need to compete with everyone else. Learn to love constraints. It might sound counterintuitive, but having fewer options can actually bring more freedom. Constraints help reduce anxiety, decision fatigue, and the pressure to make the perfect choice. So embrace them. Whether it's limiting your options for dinner or narrowing your focus to one goal at a time, having constraints can make decision-making easier and more enjoyable. I recently read a story, it was not in this book, and I don't remember where it was, so I cannot quote it. I'm so sorry about that. About Warren Buffett and his private pilot. One day the pilot was asking Mr. Buffett about goals and how he could achieve everything that he wanted to do. Mr. Buffett told him to make a list of the top 25 goals he would like to achieve throughout his life. Then he said, go back through it and circle your top 5. Once you have your top 5, get rid of the other 20 and don't touch that with a 10-foot pole until you've done your 5 because that's too much to focus on. So get your top 5 and then you can revisit everything else. And here's today's Barefoot Challenge. Pick one area of your life to simplify. Whether it's choosing a hobby, deciding what to eat, or setting one focused goal, try narrowing down your options and see how it feels to just make a choice without second guessing. So here's the thing, simplifying your decisions and leaning into a satisficer mindset can make a big difference. It's about making decisions that feel good enough, not perfect. And it's about letting go of the constant pressure to find the best option. When you take a step back and stop overthinking, you free up mental space to focus on what truly matters. It's not about having fewer choices in life, it's about making better, more intentional choices. If you want to dive deeper into this, I have linked Dr. Schwartz's The Paradox of Choice book below for you to check out on your own. That's all for now. Take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.